God exist? It's a really big question. Some would say it's probably the most important question a Christian had to ask. And it's surrounded by a lot of other questions, like who are we? Where do we come from? Is there any meaning in life? How did the universe begin? It's a question that every person of faith has had to answer. And it's a question that's challenged Christianity for centuries. And it seems like the opposition is just growing. So if I were to ask you today, why do you even believe in a God? What would you say?
Well, I would think that anyone that really wants to use reason or ration would have to say that this world has to have a first cause. And there has to be something that created all this. Things don't naturally become more ordered, they become more chaotic. And somehow in all of this great wide world, everything is very ordered and very structured. How can you not believe there's something else that's transcendent beyond this world and beyond the things that we know?
I know that in the creation of a song or creation of a painting, it takes more than just know-how. It takes care, it takes commitment, it takes thought. I look around me and I see beautiful creation. The thing is that I know every time I write a song, every time I paint a picture, that there's love that goes into that, there's thought that goes in there, there's part of me that goes into that. I look outside and I see the sunrise or the sunset, and it's infinitely more beautiful than anything I could create.
People always referencing whether something is fair or unfair. That to me is kind of like an appeal to some sort of authority, and they wonder, you know, like where is the justice? Where is this person who can judge this situation that I'm in and can say, like, this is right and this is wrong? It seems to me like humans have this inner understanding of what is right and what is wrong, and that can't happen unless there is a God or a being who established those things.
The belief in God, the belief in a higher being, is what I believe gives humans their hope and their purpose. You have to hope that there is a God, that there is afterlife. Otherwise, this whole life is purely meaningless.
But you look outside and you see life in trees, and you see life in the mountains, and you see life in the birds of the air. That's what I think God is. God is life to me. I see it evident in everything.
So if God does exist, can we prove it? And if we can't, why not? Why wouldn't God, in all of His infinite power and wisdom, just show us that He exists?
Can we prove that God exists? If by prove you mean prove it in such a way that it's beyond any reasonable doubt and dispute, no. Can we nevertheless offer a rational case? Can we nevertheless show that it's perfectly intelligent, thoughtful, informed to believe in God? Absolutely.
The truth is, God doesn't want us to prove He exists, because if He did, then He would do so, and He would just show up and we'd all have to believe. But see, then we'd have people believing out of selfishness instead of believing out of conformity to character. God wants us to believe because we choose to believe. He can give us a preponderance of evidence, but in the end there has to be a faith element there that makes us go the rest of the way. The truth is, you can't believe anything without faith. Nothing at all. I look at the moon and I can tell you it's made out of cheese. And then you as a scientist might come and tell me, no, it's made out of rock. Well, I have to have faith either in my eyes that say it's cheese, or have faith in you as a scientist that say it's rock. But in the end, I have to decide what I'm going to have faith in. We can't prove God to exist, and God never intended us to try to prove that He exists. Instead, He's given us more than enough evidence that we can come to the knowledge of Him. If we seek Him, we'll find Him.
The most powerful intellectual tradition in the world is the Christian theistic tradition. There's simply no denying this. I mean, the great philosophers who are the founders of profound thinking in our culture have been people who believed in God for the most part. It's also interesting that the founders of Western science, and a lot of people want to pit science and Christianity against each other. The fact of the matter is, the people who started the scientific enterprise were people who believed in God's existence and wanted to glorify God, and their aim was to think God's thoughts after Him. So, can a rational, thoughtful, intelligent person believe in God? The overwhelming historical record says yes, without any doubt.
And where do atheists fit in all this? What do they believe or don't believe? It's not as simple as you might expect.
There's a subtle but really very important difference between an atheist and an agnostic. Both of them come from Greek words. The word atheist comes from the Greek word theist. which is someone who believes in God. Theism is belief in God. You put the A in front of it, you negate it. An atheist is someone who believes there is no God.
The atheists typically come from a strand of thinking that is a whole lot more dogmatic. They've really bought into somebody's philosophy because there's not enough evidence to say there isn't a God. Typically it's Marxism, or maybe it's Ayn Rand as a philosopher, or some other major belief, even Sigmund Freud. The atheist is saying there is no God and I'm going to live with that reality, even though it causes tension in their hearts, even though when something happens bad to somebody they know, they want to pray. Even though they have these desires to know God and to interact with God, they'll deny them.
They simply don't have the same hope for happiness. They simply don't have the same aspirations. They can't have those. They've got to lower the ceiling on hope and human meaning. Likewise, the word agnostic comes from Greek words. The word here, gnostic, is the word that has to do with knowledge. Again, you negate that, it is someone who doesn't know, agnostic. So an agnostic is one who purports, I don't know whether there's a God or not. Although they tend usually to be people who lean toward the atheistic side, ironically.
Typically, these are people who are not dogmatic, but people who are mentally lazy. They just have decided that the most important question known to humanity isn't worth investigating further. Very few agnostics are people who've actually looked into it. Really, it's somebody who is more daring, who is dynamic, who wants to explore and figure out the truth. They'll move away from either of those two beliefs.
All right, so we can't prove that God exists, but there is some convincing evidence out there. So what support do we have?
There's evidence from the creation itself, there's evidence from the design of creation, and there's evidence from the moral law. Evidence from creation just means if things are created, there had to be somebody who created them. And if you ask me, it takes a whole lot less faith to say there's a God who caused things than to say everything just happened without a God.
The argument from design, and the basic point is this: the world had to be a certain way for human beings to exist. So, for instance, here are 2 or 3 points that you could throw out just immediately. The force of explosion of the Big Bang and the consequent rate of expansion of the universe, had it been even slightly, and we're talking about an astronomically small number, had it even been slightly different, it wouldn't have been possible for human life to exist. The strong nuclear force, if it were slightly different, again, life could not exist. There are like 24 of these parameters, really tiny windows. If things were even slightly different, human life wouldn't be possible. And lots of people looked at this and said, it's just mind-boggling, it's just inconceivable that all of these things would have happened by chance.
The third argument is the argument from moral law. It says this, that we believe, for some reason, that there's a right and wrong, and that's innate within the human nature. There must be somebody or something somewhere that gave us this right and wrong, and of course that's God.
So the oxygen in our atmosphere generally stays between 20 and 22%. If that were to drop anywhere below 18%, we would all suffocate. If it were to jump above 25, fires would rage out of control. Some people say that we were involved just to fit these circumstances. But consider this. If you were taking a hike and you looked down, you found a watch and you picked it up, you wouldn't say, wow, this was just randomly put together over time by chance. You would think that someone designed it. Something intelligent built it and then put it there. After all, the gears had to be fit perfectly in order for it to tick.